Total Therapy Training Podcast, a podcast where you accompany me in my journey through traditional Chinese medicine. Today we have the lovely Claire, and she's going to be speaking about menopause and how TCM can help us with that situation. So Claire, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me on. I'm really well, thank you.
Excellent. I'm so excited, especially at the moment where menopause is a bit of a hot topic, isn't it? We've had a lot of ladies talking about it just lately. So this is great. So first and foremost, Claire, as we always start the show, please tell us your story. What brings you to the wonderful world of TCM?
A wonderful world of TCM. So I was brought up around Chinese medicine in a way. My father was a GP and in the late 80s went over to China to study acupuncture and used it in his GP practice for migraines and for basically pain until he retired. So I was kind of always aware of that. As a family, we're quite into, I guess, healthy living. And so it's always sort of been around. We did IVF. I used it for IVF. So I was aware of it, but actually hadn't even thought about practicing it myself until I hit the menopause.
Wow.
And so I had a corporate job. I'd run businesses, crazy world. And I started to not feel great. And I think probably 3 years before I knew I was perimenopausal, I probably had symptoms. And it really hit me. I was at Leeds station. I'd been in a meeting, and halfway through the meeting, I just looked around the room and thought, I've not got a clue. I don't know anyone's name. I don't know anything. So the meeting finished. I managed to sort of get through it. And I ended up at Leeds station. And I got to Leeds station and I looked at the board and I had no idea at all where I lived.
Oh my goodness.
It had gone. So I wasn't frightened. There was no emotion. There was just blankness. And this lovely man came over and spoke to me in a high-vis jacket and said, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm fine. I think I'm going through the menopause because I don't know where I live." And he was like, "You're crying."
Oh.
I was like, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Anyway, my wife's been through this. Help me find." Eventually, we found my ticket in my pocket, and I got home, burst into tears, and went, "Right, there's got to be another one," And that was when I started researching, decided I was going to give up the corporate world, and then that's where I sort of discovered acupuncture, and that was it really. I started my training and with Total Therapy, which has just been amazing. Amazing. I don't think I'll ever stop training. I don't think you ever stop training with acupuncture.
Really, it's like, to me, like the more and more I speak to you guys, it's just, there's the rabbit hole is never ending, isn't it? The multitude of things it can do.
Yeah, and I think for me, because I have such a clear path of where I want to be with the acupuncture, it is women's health from, first period all the way to post menopause. I can, I think, be a bit more selective about the training that I do to make sure that adds to the sort of portfolio that I'm giving women.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
So like, how crazy is that you had this situation and you didn't, like, because I think if I was sat in a meeting and I couldn't remember where I lived, I would panic. I would be kind of beside myself thinking, what's going on? I'd probably think I'd lost my mind with dementia. So how are you so calm in that moment?
Because I think, and this is one of the perimenopause symptoms, is you either get this anxiety or you get this kind of, what did I come in the kitchen for? This inability. And I think that's where I was. It wasn't that there was just no emotion. It was gone. It was empty. I was like, whoa, okay. So it was interesting. You would have thought I would have panicked, but actually the menopause often does the opposite and makes you completely forget. Literally. You're like, what was I going to do? Where am I driving to? It's that, sometimes people call it brain fog as well.
Yeah.
And I think it was that I was experiencing.
Wow. Okay. That's crazy. So your incident has now led you onto your path, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I was lucky enough to go in the new Davina McCall book, you know, the My Menopausing book. So went down to London. We were invited down to London to go and meet Dr. Naomi Potter and Davina McCall. So I think these kind of people who are putting it on the radar, women are discussing it now more than ever. It's never been more important for women to have information and access to choices as to how they want to manage their menopause.
Yeah. I
And that's where acupuncture comes in.
where like this is a little bit off topic, but where did the stigma come from? Because maybe it's just me, but I think menopause is just a natural thing of life. Like, why was there a stigma attached to it?
I don't know necessarily that it was a stigma. I think that it was just classic put up with it, and it wasn't spoken about. And there was a study done that was very, very damaging to menopause treatment in this actually in the whole of Europe. But it said that HRT was very dangerous. And so all the funding and all the research to go into that part of medicine and menopause for women in particular was kind of pulled. And so for 30 plus years, there really wasn't any work being done on how to help women through the menopause. And so the reality was, when women went to the doctors, there wasn't really a solution for them. And now we realise that the report was very damning, it was inaccurate, that the whole research piece was just not credible. And we have this amazing emerging research that says, look, you know, for many women, it is okay. For lots of people, there's also this and these other things as well. So I think it was just sidelined, which seems slightly crazy when you have 50% of the population that are going to go through the menopause.
Yeah, that's what I was
It's
going to say. So
insane.
what did they do?
Well, a lot of women went on to antidepressants.
Yeah,
Women gave up work and actually are still giving up work and are still being given antidepressants. But I think that that is changing. There's a wonderful positive shift change
yeah,
in people actually feeling that they can talk about it. And I think as soon as things are discussed out in the open and honestly,
yeah,
I think that is enables other people to go, well, actually, I feel the same, and that's what's happening. And I think doctors, you know, are on the front line. I think there's a lot of amazing doctors out there that have done the extra work and are really working well with their patients. So I think there is a change, not for everybody. I accept that there are lots of people who are told just to get on with it or given um, antidepressants, but I think that is changing. I believe that that is changing. I have to believe that that's changing, actually. And also, you know, the rise of acupuncture being used for menopause. I'm not alone here. There are other people doing amazing work. And so I think it's nice that there seems to be a bigger toolkit, a bigger option for women in the menopause now. And I think acupuncture is going to play a big part in the future.
exciting. That's really
Mm.
exciting. So I know that we're speaking about menopause, but what is your specialty, Claire? Like, what do you mostly deal with, and how do you do it?
So I set up the practice to really focus in on women's emotional, physical, and mental health. So literally from the first period that you have all the way through to postmenopause. I see loads of patients. So it might be that some women aren't anywhere near the menopause, but actually they, you know, they have young children, they're in a high pressure job, they're not sleeping, they don't feel themselves, and they can come. And as you know, acupuncture, you know, we don't differentiate between emotional and physical symptoms. We treat holistically. So we're able to help that. And I think, I mean, a lot of my patients are with symptoms that relate to menopause. I treat fertility, and I treat anxiety. And very often there's links between the symptoms that people are having
Yeah,
and the Chinese approach to the body. There's always a lovely pattern, and so the results are fantastic.
yeah, yeah. And so I know in our initial chat you spoke about the auricular acupuncture for
Yes.
menopause. So explain that to us.
So I think what's important is for us to also just define this menopause idea for acupuncture and what. So basically, the menopause is a transition for women. It's your transition from your periods basically slowing down, stopping, to you not having them. So you've got the perimenopause phase, which most women enter into sort of mid-late 40s. They start to see hormonal changes, and they start to perhaps their periods change, whether it's the time scale, so whether their cycle length changes, shorter or longer. It might be that their periods get heavier or lighter, but also they start to have other symptoms, the vasomotor symptoms like hot flushes, night sweats, that feeling of anxiety. This tends to happen in the perimenopausal phase, and that's really caused by estrogen.
Okay.
So you're born with all the eggs that you're ever going to have. And over the course of your life, you release those eggs. And obviously, you then start your menses, your periods. And by the time you get to your mid to late 40s, there's not many eggs left, which is why, of course, fertility is much harder at that age. So the ovarian function declines. And with that, your estrogen declines. And estrogen is a phenomenally important hormone. It's a crucial hormone in the growth, development, and physiology of the reproductive systems. For women, it's in our ovaries, and men have it in their testes. It triggers growth of your breast tissue. It maintains healthy vaginal tissue. It triggers our periods, and it's absolutely crucial in the development of the fetus in the womb. So it's a phenomenally important female hormone, and it just starts to drop off a cliff. So it plays this healthy role that all of a sudden changes. So women start to experience, I mean, there's over 100 recognized menopausal symptoms, and they are not nice. You have the ones everyone sort of knows about, the hot flushes and the night sweats and the disturbed sleep, the sort of brain fog, the anxiety. But there's fatigue, and there's awful physical symptoms. People get leg cramps. They can have vaginal dryness and itching. People get awful headaches. People think they are going mad. It is phenomenally overwhelming for people. And so all this is happening. And basically in Chinese, so that's the sort of conventional medicine side of things. In Chinese medicine, they have a completely different approach to it. It's called the second spring. It's a time for women to celebrate and welcome this change. It's a shift, really, from this fertility and reproductive phase into this one of what they say is about conserving and nourishing the self, which doesn't really translate into people's experience of it in the Western culture. And so what Chinese medicine can do is as it always aims to do, is get that balance back, that yin-yang balance, the flow of qi and blood, all working so that the body goes back to a healthy function. And that's basically where the difference lies. In Chinese medicine, there's lots of organs involved in the menopause, but the main ones really, if we want to keep this nice and simple, is the kidney and the liver and the heart. I mean, spleen is involved as well. So your kidney is basically the organ that we associate with growth, maturation, aging, and it's where we get our essence. And in menopause, it becomes imbalanced. And in particular, kidney yin declines. That's your, in simplest of terms, your cooling system. And so you directly get the symptoms linked to hot flushes. And so the kidney qi, the kidney energy is declining. And then the liver gets involved. They have a lovely close relationship. They share the same blood. And so as the kidney goes into imbalance, the liver also becomes imbalanced. In fact, it becomes depressed. And so we find that function isn't working well. And so with that, you can get emotional issues. You can get the anger. People feel exhausted as well. And then the kidneys just don't nourish. So they're not sending all that beautiful energy to the heart. And so the heart is also then deficient, or jus as we call it. And this is a really important part of it, because the kidney stores our energy or our life force. Jing, whatever you want to call it. And our foundation of our Shen, or our mind in Chinese medicine, comes from that essence. And so I think for me, the Shen is like, it's your spark, your spirit. And so if the essence in the kidney is deficient, then the Shen suffers. And when we say disturbed Shen, we talk about people who are perhaps unsettled, they might have anxiety, they are also disturbed sleep, insomnia, restlessness. It's that unsettlingness. So for Chinese medicine, with menopause, we seek to not just treat the hot flushes, not just treat that, we're actually going to go right back to the organ. It's that holistic approach to rebalance that and then have the knock-on effect to that. And for me, I treat people on a one-on-one for menopause, but one of my best successes, I think, for women is my group sessions. And so I knew I wanted to do it in a group because I think the talking, that shared experience, it changes people's relationship with their menopause, because they listen and hear other people sharing exactly the same emotions and stories, and it just becomes less lonely. And so auricular was a natural choice. It's ideal because, of course, you're seated, you're fully clothed, and it's just accessible for everybody. So the ear is like a switchboard. Basically, it sends impulses to the brain, it stimulates endorphins, it lowers stress, and it induces relaxation. There's loads of amazing auricular points that do that. And so for me, I wanted to see if I could use it. And one of the most, I guess, well-known auricular acupuncture protocols is the NADA protocol, which is the National Acupuncture Detoxification Association. And this was a really interesting, it's quite a new form of acupuncture, actually, in the fact that it was actually sort of came from the 70s. And there was a gentleman, Dr. Wen in China, who started to discover that there's these 5 little acupuncture points in the ear were amazing at helping people detoxify and reduce some of the symptoms associated actually with drug addiction. And this was then rolled out all over the world because people saw the benefits of these 5 little points in the ear that were having on people's overall well-being. So, I mean, it's used, 35 countries all over the world. It's set up in wherever there's been a major trauma. For example, after 9/11 and the Grenfell Tower, we saw clinics being set up, auricular NADA clinics being set up in those areas to help people with the shared trauma, the stress, the anxiety. And it's this protocol that just grounds, stabilizes, calms people. It's an amazing reset. So I started with that. And so there's these 5 points initially give the women a reset and help to just rebalance some of the organs that we've been talking about. There's the kidney point on the ear, there's the liver point, there's Shen Men, which is about anxiety and nervousness, and there's the sympathetic point. And this is amazing because this actually just calms the nervous system. It's telling fight or flight to switch off. Let's just calm and ground. So I started using that, and for the first, what I say to all my women is sign up for 6 weeks. Once a week they come, and we'll put in the auricular point. There's 20 minutes of guided meditation. It's lovely and dark and very calming and relaxing. And then for the rest of the time, they chat. And then so we do that. And then probably by number 3, people are noticing a significant change in symptoms. Overall well-being happens for most people after the first session. They just feel calmer. It's that layer that when everything's going wrong, some days you can take that amazing deep breath and go, I've got this. And other days you just can't. It gives you that layer back.
Yeah.
And so people will then say, actually, my leg cramps have gone, my hot flushes have gone, but I'm struggling to get to sleep, or I'm still struggling with this symptom. And that's when, even in a group setting, I can say to them, right, okay, let's add in this point, and I change it so that each individual gets their own treatment, because of course we're all so different.
Yeah.
And so that's why auricular for me works. I must admit, by 3, I do say to people to come in shoes and socks that they can easily take off, because there's some incredible points on the feet
Oh, okay.
that work really well with menopause symptoms in particular. And the results have just been fantastic. Women are feeling better, symptoms are reducing, and they have a new network,
Yes.
a new group of people to talk to. It's really working.
Brilliant. Because I suppose this journey, like I'm 39, so I'm to go through this, but this journey can be quite lonely for ladies.
I think it's really lonely for women. I think it's confusing. I think as a woman, you grow up, don't you? And then you start your periods, and you start to learn over the course of that time period about what that means for you as an individual. And then some women, those that try and want to get pregnant or don't want to get pregnant, also understand their body on a different level.
Yeah.
And then when you've had children, you change again. So we're used to this change. And then you have decades where you kind of know where you are with your own body, and then all of a sudden you hit this perimenopause phase, and it is nothing like you've ever experienced before. And because the symptoms are so varied, and they're not always all the time, I don't think women can get into a routine or fully understand them. I think now there's a lot more literature, but you go back even as little as 5 years, and there was nothing like the amazing information that there is now. And so people, honestly, I think I read a terrible statistic not that long ago that 30% of women entering into the perimenopause were on antidepressants. And it's because it's not been understood. In the past, that kind of stat was around, and you kind of go, what? And so I think it's lonely, and I think it's really confusing.
Yeah, definitely.
That sense of self goes.
Well, yeah, because I know people say we shouldn't, but we do like to have some sort of element of control as to what's going on in our lives. And when that's been stripped away from you and you physically can't gain that control, that must be scary.
And I think I think the physical symptoms are awful. I think the emotional symptoms are really hard. And that sense of self, that sense of who you are goes. And that's linked back to the Chong Mai, which is one of the vessels in Chinese medicine. And this is really, it's referred to as the sea of blood because of its massive influence on the uterus and the blood channels. But it also strengthens your sense of self. And that's exhausted when you go into menopause. And so it isn't working as well. And so in TCM, we have a condition called running piglet. And it's that sensation of that fluttering going up from your stomach and into your chest, that anxiety, that sort of overwhelmingness. And that is a sign of this chongma, this vessel being exhausted. And so there's all these changes that in Chinese medicine, we don't see it as anxiety. We see it as a exhausted chongma. The good news is, here's a point for that.
Yeah.
In this case, spleen 4 is a great point for this exhaustion. And so they have all these, and the sense of self comes from the chongma. And so that depleted sense of self, that not understanding yourself anymore, the changes in how you feel. People come to me and say, really don't like my family anymore. I don't like my life. I don't like, and it isn't that. It's an imbalance.
Yes.
And I think it's just a different approach. And we're getting them, we're just showing their body how to heal itself again. It's quite an empowering thing. People are like, I'm so pleased, because that would have bothered me before. And now it's like able to, and I think that sense of control comes back, that you were talking about. That lack of control comes back with the treatments.
Wow. So So were you saying at the start of that answer about in China they say it's a celebration, it's a transformation, it's a second spring. So in my head then I'm imagining that the ladies, they feel this coming on, they know all of these symptoms, that it's well spoken about, I suppose. They go to the acupuncturists, and with by stimulating these organs and replenishing them and everything else, does that then give them a second lease of life? Or
Do you know, it's interesting, isn't it? There's very little mention of the menopause in any classic Chinese medicine texts. And there has
really?
been yes, there's been a few findings and research on this. One of the reasons is because there is such a different attitude to aging for women. Women are slowing down at this time period. So in TCM, female life is divided into cycles of 7 years. Okay, that's how it works. And so there's a very famous book called The Yellow Emperor's Canon of Internal Medicine. And he says that the physical change of women occurs, obviously, every 7 years. So at 7, kidney energy is strong, your teeth are changing, your hair's growing. Then at 14, menstruation appears. The Ren meridian flows and the Chong Mai flows. Okay. 21, kidney energy is in balance. You are fertility perfection. And that then carries on till 21 to 28 are really in Chinese medicine considered the optimal childbearing ages. At 28, you start to, your bones are strong, your muscles are strong, the body is primed and ready for having children. Then by 35, fertility starts to decline. At 42, it's difficult to conceive. They talk about wrinkles forming and the hair going grey. And at 49, the Ren meridian and the Chong Mai meridian decline. Menstruation dries up and they're no longer expected to conceive. So these, in China, women expect this for a start. And secondly, the diet is very, very different. There's a lot of estrogen rich foods, soy in particular, mung beans, that kind of diet really helps with health. And also there's a very different attitude. They celebrate it and they are encouraged to, you know, look after themselves and take time for themselves. And in our culture, women are at the height of their career, they have small children and they have not got a second to spare. So I think there's a very different attitude to it.
see, it's so fascinating.
It is. It's amazing.
It's crazy. So also in our initial chat, because this to me is even more bonkers, right? We spoke. Well, you explained something to me about prostate cancer. So I
Yes.
wondered, would it be okay if you were to share that with the listeners, please, Claire?
Yeah. So women and men both have estrogen. We also have testosterone and progesterone. Okay. So we share lots of them, but I think estrogen is considered a female hormone, right? But what's really interesting is in prostate cancer, estrogen plays a crucial role in the development of prostate cancer. And so for men with this type of cancer, they have hormone therapy to reduce estrogen levels. So in simplest terms, they're put into the menopause. So they experience a lot of similar symptoms, particularly hot flushes, night sweats, anxiety. And so in clinics, cancer clinics, and actually within some NHS hospitals as well, men are offered auricular acupuncture to help reduce those symptoms. And I work in a clinic in Leeds where it's offered to men going through it, and the results are fantastic. Rather like the results for auricular acupuncture for women who are put into early menopause because of breast cancer and hormone treatments. Auricular acupuncture is used there as well. So my goal is to get that brilliant research and those findings and that evidence, because that's what we want, isn't it? We want evidence into the mainstream.
Wow. My goodness. That is a big goal, but it's life changing, isn't it?
Well, just imagine a nurse or a acupuncturist working alongside side, your local GP, and your local GP or medical practice or health centre says, oh, and we're able to offer you this as well. And I think we know it's not going to be free for all, but there's no reason why we can't have a mix where some people pay some and then some people have it for free. And because it's group acupuncture, it's a lot cheaper than one-to-one acupuncture. So
Yes.
it's more affordable.
Yeah.
So that again opens up the door. That's one of the other reasons why I really enjoy it, because I know I've got people who just would not be able to afford to come on a regular basis and pay the full price. But this is much more affordable and so accessible.
Do you know what? Something just come into my head as I was listening. So, you know what your dad did, because your dad was a GP and then
Mm.
he went and studied acupuncture. Do you feel like you're kind of following in your dad's footsteps?
Well, I don't know. They're big shoes to fill. I think I'm definitely influenced. I come from a very medical family where there's a lot of really healing people in our family,
Yeah.
you know, from oncologists to pediatricians to my little brother's also a GP over in Canada. So I think I was just always open to the idea of healing and helping people, but being a conventional medical practitioner hasn't particularly appealed to me.
I see.
I quite like this side of it. I like this holistic approach. I like this idea that for 3,500 years and more, this medical system has been working and that it adapts to our changing lives.
Yeah,
I think it's incredible.
exactly. I would. I'd love to know why it was swapped into tablets and things like that. Like, if this has been working for, like you say, 3,500 years and some, like, why did we change it?
I think there wasn't the access to the information from China until the 70s, to be honest with you. I mean, in the olden days, the acupuncturists worked for a particular family and you know, their skills and their knowledge was not shared. You know, they wanted to keep that information because they were the experts. And then that has changed, and you know, we see, and when we talk about acupuncture as well, we have to include, you know, there's Japanese acupuncture, there's, you know, there's a wealth of other countries offering acupuncture, and we can learn from all of them.
Yeah, yeah,
And you know, there's 5 elements acupuncture. There's all these different approaches to it, but at the heart of it is holistic health.
yeah,
Treat the cause, not just the symptoms, and that is in many ways very different to giving someone pain relief if they have a headache or get migraines or have a bad back.
yeah.
In Chinese medicine, that wouldn't be an option. They'd go, well, let's get rid of the cause.
Yes, and I think that's better than just treating the symptoms. But yeah, who am I? Anyway. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the success story. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I know you said, you know, what is your biggest success story in your treatments? I think it's so hard. Anytime you help anyone change their life, make them feel better, is just a privilege, isn't it? I think it's hard to beat a photograph of a positive pregnancy test at like 11 o'clock at night from someone. I think that's an amazing experience and a success story. But I have to say, the group auricular acupuncture courses that I'm doing for menopausal women are, I mean, I knew they would work and I knew that it would be an effective treatment. You know, the research is there, the evidence is there. I knew that. But I think it's when they walk through the door, you can see life is better
Yeah.
and they are happier and what they're sharing. And so I think, you know, I do get an awful lot of real joy from that, because the system works.
Yeah.
It's been working for thousands of years, but you know, this using it to treat women who, you know, not everybody wants to have HRT, not everybody can have HRT, and people sometimes absolutely adore their HRT and their progesterone and their testosterone. And the thing is, it doesn't matter which one of those camps you sit in or have been forced to sit in, it works for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there's so few contraindications, there's so few dangers with auricular acupuncture, and acupuncture in general, that people will feel better, you know. And then you make better food choices, don't you? Because diet's huge, you know. And then they do a bit more exercise, and actually sometimes they say no to something that they wouldn't have said no to. They're just, you know, I say to the ladies, I say, just become your own best friend.
Yeah.
You know, just look after you first. And I think people start to find that they have that ability to do that.
Yes. It's interesting you say that. So I had a lady come to me for aromatherapy last week, and she had arthritis in her neck and shoulders. And she come back a month later for the second treatment, and I said, how are you, neck and shoulders? She went, oh, they're still hurting, but after that massage, I actually felt empowered enough to join Slimming World and to start walking again. And I was like, oh,
Yeah, it opens the door.
yes.
It
Just
does.
small things that make us feel better, which gives us the motivation and the drive to go off and do something for ourselves. It's crazy.
100%. And I think there is an awful lot about that self-care opens so many other doors that you didn't even expect them to do. You know, people are saying, well, and I, you know, I'm drinking alcohol because, you know, I'm obviously, we know a lot of alcohol is not very good for anybody. A lot of anything, overindulgence in anything is not healthy. But people don't want to be, you don't always want to be told. So when you discover it for yourself,
Yeah.
and that's what acupuncture does, it helps you just to have that inner calm, that headspace to go, I'm going to say no to that, or I'm going to exercise, or I'm going to go for the walk. And actually, on the walk, I'm going to sit on a bench on my own for 10 minutes and just appreciate the day.
Yeah.
It's that switch, that wonderful internal switch that just allows people to get that rebalance.
Yes. Oh, it's so interesting. Okay, so what would you advise then any woman who may be listening who's going through the menopause or the perimenopause? How can they help themselves? What would you say?
Well, I think there's so many great menopause heroes out there at the minute. I mean, I absolutely love Lisa Snowdon.
Yeah.
She was a brilliant midweek menopause. She's been doing that for a very long time. Obviously, Dr. Naomi Potter and Davina McCall. I think these are women that are talking, well, obviously, Dr. Naomi Potter speaks from a brilliant medical perspective, gives a fantastic advice, but it's also accessible. You know, it's really, she really connects with what we want to know and then delivers it in a way that is digestible and not complicated and you can understand it. And then you've got Lisa Snowdon, who has also works with Dr. Naomi Potter, but also has this a brilliant approach to it, and this honesty and that vulnerability that both her and Davina McCall, and that for me, I think they would be a go-to because I think they're safe. I think they're all about choice. I think they're all about giving women the right information to make their own choice.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Louise Newsome, I think, has got some amazing resources on her website. There's a brilliant form on there that allows you to fill it out, and it helps you then, if you want to go and speak to your GP, it gives you a structure to that and helps you and the GP to work towards your goals. So I think they're good ones to go. What we'll do is we'll put these in all the links.
Yes,
When we
please.
do the podcast at the bottom, let's make sure there's lots of links for people to click on.
Yeah.
I think there's no question that people should be seeing if they can find a local acupuncturist. Again, we'll put a link on that. People who are members or people that have been trained at Total Therapy, obviously I'm going to recommend because I know the standard of treatment there. But mostly speak. Tell your family, your friends, tell your hairdresser, tell somebody, I'm not feeling right, and share, because I think as soon as that dialogue it starts, you'll realise I'm not alone. It's fine. when the Davina McCall documentary came out, the whole family sat. I've got teenage children and a husband, and sat them down and said, watch this, because the information that it gave, everybody goes, okay, right, I understand this more now, and so I can, talk to them and they understand it. And I think that's an important part of it as well. And in the workplace, I think speak to your HR, speak to your line manager, see if you can become a menopause friendly accredited business, all those things that you can do. But basically, I think it's having that conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that is a huge thing, isn't it? It's just having that conversation and knowing that you're not alone. And I think because we know, yeah, everybody goes through it, but it's that ickiness of talking about it.
Yeah, and I think women are always really surprised when they say it and somebody else goes, me too, me too, me too, because we have this, we must get on with it, it must just be me kind of mentality sometimes. And I think we have to work through that and make ourselves a little bit vulnerable and say, I'm not feeling right. I'm really anxious all the time. I'm not sleeping well. And for someone else to go, oh, and also read, there's so much information out there. Stick to people who have got a nice, open viewpoint now. I think the ones that I've mentioned in particular, there's no telling you what to do. It's just giving you the information to decide the right path for you. And it isn't a straight line. So you might think this is your solution. You might hit a few bumps in the road. So just be prepared as well to have a little bit more flexibility, and realize that, some people go down one path, it doesn't quite work for them. So they have to adapt that a bit. But there is balance to be had again. You can feel well again. You do not have to feel like you're dragging around a 75-year-old lady's body and that you feel miserable all the time. You don't have to have those emotions. It can be changed.
Amazing. It's amazing. So, okay, Claire, so you're up near Leeds. So if anybody's listening and they're going through it and they'd like to come and join your group, how can they do that? Obviously, we'll have the links, but could you tell us?
Yeah, so I'm based just outside of Ilkley in West Yorkshire, so that's sort of between Leeds and Skipton, and I run the clinic here from my treatment room, and they can find me on Instagram at the Rebalance Clinic, and there's a link there that they can just book on if they want to. But also, I do a free discovery call, so people can click on and we'll have a little Zoom chat and talk to people. And also, if people just want to follow me and then message me, if I can't help you, somebody within my network will be nearby. We've got a UK-wide network, and we'll be able to help point people in the right direction. So yeah, just ask.
Excellent. Yeah, so that's the Rebalance Clinic, isn't it? And I'm
Yes.
sure you've got lots of educational posts and information on your social medias anyway.
Yeah, it's good. There's some bits on there, and I think it is about having a look at that space, following Lisa Snowdon and Davina and all these other people as well. Just get some information. But if you're not sure and you don't even know where to start, DM me on the platform and I will help people. There's lots and lots of information that I've got already sat here that I send out to people all the time, which gives them information about their options and what they can do. And yeah, we'll just support people.
Excellent. That's amazing. Thank you for that. So, okay then, my final question, Claire. You kind of said what your goal is, but what is next for you then, Claire?
Gosh, what's next? There's quite a few exciting things in the pipeline, and I'm speaking to some GP practices about opening up some sort of menopause acupuncture groups there. I'm looking at a few schools locally that I'm talking to, just about introducing the idea of acupuncture for young girls who are struggling with really heavy periods and menses and mental health. is huge, and so we know that acupuncture can work for that. And I'm also working on something with total therapy, that we will announce, really soon.
Ooh, secrets. I like it. Excellent. Oh my goodness, Claire. Well, thank you so much for all your time today and all your wealth of information, because it's mind blowing. Especially like because I'm coming into that era now. So to have this information already will help me a lot in my journey.
Yeah, and there's a lot that you can do to help put yourself in an optimal position for your menopause transition.
Yeah.
And there's the don't ever underestimate the work that you put on in terms of keeping yourself fit and healthy, the foods that you're eating, but also just being aware any changes that you are feeling. It's worth noting them down. It's worth noting it down if there's a change to your cycle. Menopause, okay, on average, people enter it sort of any time from the mid 40s onwards. But actually, for some people, it isn't then, and they can experience it earlier. But also, again, any change, anything you're worried about, speak to a professional, make sure that it is a natural occurring change in the body, like the menopause, before you decide it's the menopause for yourself. We need to make sure that it's not something else.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Excellent. Well, I say this a lot, but I 100% mean this. We're going to have you back on to talk about periods.
Yeah, periods, amazing results with acupuncture.
Really?
And again, it's another thing. We don't have to suffer. Yay! There's a
Yay!
solution. And I think that it's also one of those life-changing treatments, acupuncture and heavy periods and menses, or even people that haven't had periods, people who want to have a baby and their periods are all over the place. Acupuncture is proven. The evidence is out there. The research is there in so many instances to help rebalance, to help people be able to live each week and each month without fear that they're going to come on their period and they're going to feel dreadful and it's going to be uncomfortable. It can be looked at with acupuncture, and in many cases, in lots of cases, we can help women and young girls, teenagers, not suffer.
Yeah, because I in my own podcast that I used to, I had a lady on, and she was explaining and what she's into all the hormones and the phases and everything, and what she's explaining about some women's cycles, you can literally feel like you've got manic depression when really all it is an imbalance in the body, and it's your periods creating that situation.
Absolutely. Again, it's another huge hormonal change and time in a woman's life that sometimes needs some help being rebalanced.
Yeah.
And acupuncture is all about rebalancing the yin, the yang, the healthy flow of qi and blood through the body to create rebalance.
Wow. Thank you so much, Claire. This has
My
been
pleasure.
You're amazing. Thank you. And yeah, we will definitely have you on for periods. Definitely.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to come back if we can get the message out there. There's
Yeah.
so many acupuncturists up and down this country helping women, and we can have more women getting access to it for sure.
Okay, Claire. Well, thank you ever so much for your time today, and we look forward to hearing from you again really soon.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank
Thank
you.